Hey, it's Heather. Before we jump into today's conversation, I want to take a moment to invite you into Mayhem Daughters. If you've been listening to this podcast and thinking, I need a space where I can talk about all of this with people who actually get it, well, that's exactly why I created Mayhem Daughters. It's a private, trauma informed community for daughters of narcissistic or emotionally limited mothers. A space where you don't have to explain yourself, where you're not too much, and where healing happens in connection, not in isolation. And if you're looking for something more structured, Tuesday Group is our weekly support group where we gather in real time to process, reflect, and hold space for one another. It's not just about understanding your mother wounds. It's about learning how to live beyond them. If either of those sound like what you've been needing, you can find all of the details in the show notes. Now, on to Mayhem. Today on Mother Mayhem. You thought that this was the time she would see you when all she wanted was the split second of your attention to affirm that you were still looking her way. Welcome back to Mother Mayhem, the podcast for daughters of narcissistic and emotionally limited mothers. I'm your host, Heather Gray, and today, daughters, we are in it, for lack of a better description. What it looks like in your regular everyday when you are trying to navigate a relationship with your mother in real time because you aren't low contact, you aren't no contact. You are in relationship with your mother and she's in relationship with your kids too. We have talked a lot on the show about how hard it can be to go low and no contact with your moms. But on the other side of that boundary is some physical and emotional distance, less contact. So different to set a boundary with your mother's and still be in relationship with her on the other side. And as a reminder, we instill boundaries to teach people how to be in relationship with us. We all know that this isn't how it's received by your moms, but this is a really important reminder, especially for this week's conversation. Today, I'm introducing you to Eleanor. And Eleanor, I have named you after Eleanor in The Good Place. If you're familiar with the show, Eleanor had a relationship with her mother that a lot of you would recognize. Her mom always made her feel like she was the problem. And that is something I'm going to be talking to Eleanor, our daughter, about today. Eleanor knows who her parents are, who they aren't, and what they're capable of, and what they aren't. And she is trying to navigate the how of it all. This is something I'm often walking clients through. Now that you know who your mom or who your parents are, what they're capable of and what they're not capable of, who do you need to be in response to that? It's not about assuming they will change. It's about knowing they're not going to change, that they're not capable of changing, and crafting a response around that. So here's Eleanor, and I'll find you on the other side. Heather, I first emailed you back in November of 2023, and I so appreciate your response. I want to thank you for your podcast because I have learned so much, and it is a valuable resource. I first found your podcast when I Googled narcissistic mother and enabling father. I relate to a recent episode where a daughter said she had a good upbringing. We lived in a nice neighborhood. I was an only child, so I had everything I wanted, and we led a seemingly perfect suburban life. My mom threw Halloween parties, helped me with my posters and projects, or did it for me, and was cookie mom for Girl Scouts one year. I always had a need for perfectionism, which I'm now not sure if it's my own quality or a product of my mother. I have a feeling you'll say I'm making excuses for my mom, which I might be, but I want to give you some background. My grandfather, her father, had agoraphobia and didn't talk about it because that was taboo in the 60s. And my grandmother was definitely a narcissist, bitter and grumpy as anything. My uncle, my mom's brother, was troubled and ended up committing suicide when I was in college. To say that my mom had challenges growing up is an understatement. She had severe anxiety growing up, but never told me about it until I was almost in middle school or high school. She had trouble flying and traveling without medication, and she can't drive too far without my dad, her enabler, by her side. Even now, sometimes she'll say, "Oh, I can't do that because of my anxiety." And I wonder how much is true and how much is embellished. At the same time, I remember her giving me presents and material things, but I don't remember her being there emotionally for me when I was growing up. I never felt like I could open up to her. My dad was always the one mitigating our arguments and telling me my mom didn't mean it and I should just forgive her, which I now realize is enabling. As a teenager, I remember my mom and I getting into screaming matches, and she would lock herself in her room. The fact that we never talked things out left me feeling lost and confused, and I remember writing her letters because she wouldn't talk to me. She never wrote back, by the way. I always felt like my relationship with my parents was unusual, but honestly, until I met my husband, I never realized just how unusual it was. I went to college, a 6 year program, but it was about an hour away, so I only lived on campus 2 years and then moved back home. My parents never really saw me as an adult at that point. Despite my husband being a respectable boyfriend and person, they seemed reserved about him, especially because I was spending a lot of time with him. I was 19 years old. I remember my husband proposed while we were on vacation, and I called my parents, and I think my mom may have said congratulations, but it was so empty. I was so excited, I hardly noticed. My husband and I had talked about moving out of state for several months and decided on Texas. We both got job transfers right after I graduated and right after our wedding. Of course, my parents didn't like that. Once we moved, the guilt tripping started. I would call my mom, probably a mistake, and she would tell me that it was so unbearably hot where I was, and it was so nice where they are. Or she would start with, "If only you were here." 4 years later, we find out we're pregnant, and I set up a cute picture with our dog and a pregnancy book and sent it to my parents and my in laws. My in laws are thrilled, and my parents, well, not so much. I got the same response as I did to our engagement. The guilt tripping continued and worsened once we bought a new house in 2017. We had our second child in 2018. For both kids, I did not want my mom at the hospital because I didn't want the stress of having her there. I know that sounds awful. After COVID in 2021, my dad retired and they moved across the country to within 2 miles of our house. After a year of renting, they suddenly bought a house. Although they do provide help with the kids when they're sick or help with shuttling them between sports, this is the part where I'm currently struggling. My parents pretty much insist on picking the kids up from school 2 days a week. This is a boundary that we've set because when they first moved here, they were seeing the kids 4 to 5 days a week, and my husband and I felt overwhelmed. What I'm struggling with now is that I want my kids to have grandparents in their life because I am an only child and my husband's family is very small. However, I'm not sure my parents' influence is positive. Yes, they help babysit for date night and when the kids are sick, but my mom also makes comments like, "Oh, did you buy your daughter a dress that actually fits?" Or constantly makes underhanded comments about me not brushing my daughter's hair right or not packing lunches right. I know you did a podcast about do I have to hate my mom to heal, but my question is, how do you know if you're enmeshed? And if I am, how do I pull myself out so I can focus on my relationship with my husband and kids? I feel a strong obligation to my parents to help them as they get older, but I feel like they constantly want to be over involved in our lives, knowing what I'm doing on all of my days off of work, knowing my friends' situations, thinking they're going to be invited to all of my kids' sporting events, etc., etc. It's really difficult for me to look at my adult friends and their relationships with their parents and to wonder why I don't have that. I have a really hard time accepting that my mom just really isn't capable of that. She rarely calls me, yet I call her about 5 days a week. I know, I shouldn't. Good job saying so I didn't have to, sister. When I open up and ask her for advice, I don't get sympathy or anything. I just get a uh-huh and a very vague answer like, oh, I don't know because you didn't do that. My son, who's almost 10, was diagnosed with dyslexia and is having some behavior problems at school. We have asked my parents to check his behavior sheet the 2 days that they pick my kids up from school. All they let my kids do is have screen time at their house, yet they complain because they don't get quality time with the kids. We do go visit my in laws on spring break because they have a place in Florida. My parents used to also rent a place in Florida, and we would split our time between the two condos, but that was stressful, packing up after 3 days with young kids. Now that my parents live near us, we need a break from them. I constantly feel an obligation to my parents, so how do I manage that as an only child while not being enmeshed and not losing myself? I still want to share experiences with my parents, but the constant disappointment is deflating. Even when we include them, I feel like they're not satisfied. For example, my mom takes offense when my daughter has an attitude or doesn't respond the way my mom is expecting. My daughter's almost 7, by the way. My mom then shuts down and makes some underhanded comment about my parenting. Flip to my mother-in-law, who is so good at relating to my kids that she can handle any situation, and the kids obviously respect her. My mom will say, "Why don't you teach your kids some manners if they don't say hi when we call her?" Is there a way to balance this out without going insane? Thank you for your podcast and thank you for listening. I look forward to hearing from you. Okay, Eleanor. This is so hard. And here's what I can tell you. I see something right away. Throughout your story, you already have wise mind on the scene. You know what's what, and you know what the deal is, and you are doing your very best to navigate a relationship with your parents without losing your mind. You and your husband have made so many good decisions for your family, and you are working so hard to have your own backs. You are navigating so much. However, I need you to take a deep breath for a second, sister, because I'm going to go a little bit slower here. I don't want it to hurt any more than it has to. But I also have to say that in your letter, I also hear and see little girl Eleanor, who is trying so hard to have the right response, the right boundary. I see her trying to be her big girl brave self, trying to say and do the hard things. And I see how scared she is, how sad she is, how very much she doesn't want this to be true. I see you imagining ways you could find the right words, the right way to show up so that your mom would just open her eyes and see you, really see you. See little girl Eleanor. And I imagine that she must be as confused as I was reading your letter. Why does someone so disinterested and unaffected by you even want to move so close to you? I imagine that feeling, that push-pull of them moving close but staying distant and standoffish must be so confusing. I bet when they moved there was a part of you that felt immediate pressure, while another part of you probably felt hopeful that this time would be different. I see all of this, Eleanor, and I'm going to do my very best to help you hold it. So, what is even happening here, right? Because it feels so confusing and there's so many mixed messages. One of the hardest things about enmeshment and obligation with parents like this is that they actually never name the expectation, but they make sure you feel it. There was no big speech about how they were moving closer so they could be in your business every day. No open conversation about the role they expect you to play. And yet there's this invisible contract that you're supposed to sign the second they arrive. You feel it when your mom's comments land like little knives, judging the way you parent, the way you pack lunches, the way you brush your daughter's hair. You feel it in the way that your dad plays along. He smooths things over. He doesn't push back. And then you feel it in the way that your mom just shuts down when your daughter, her granddaughter, doesn't respond to her the way she expects. This isn't about connection. It's about control, about access, about maintaining a role in your life that keeps them central without ever actually showing up in any kind of meaningful way. And because they don't say this outright, you're left feeling like you're the problem, like the one who's too sensitive, too distant, too resistant to family togetherness. And yet, look at your actions. You are trying. You're trying to make this work in a way that makes sense for your family, for your marriage, for your kids. You're trying to hold space for them while not losing yourself in the process. If anything, you are the one trying to be in relationship. They are the ones who are making it impossible. I think one of the hardest things in your letter, Eleanor, is this. You see it all really clearly now. You see the manipulation, the guilt tripping, the way your mom uses obligation instead of love. And yet, knowing that truth isn't making it hurt any less. A lot of daughters get stuck right here. Because once you see the dysfunction, the trauma, the drama, the damage, it sort of becomes tempting to think, okay, I understand it now. Why doesn't that make it any easier? But the truth is, seeing the pattern is actually only part of the process. The harder part is accepting that this isn't something you can fix, that no amount of effort, boundaries, or carefully worded conversations will make your mom into any kind of mom that you want and deserve. And that is what I think is exhausting you. More than anything, Eleanor, not just the reality of what she's doing, but the grief of knowing that it is not going to change. Where does that leave you? How do you navigate this push-pull of obligation and control, of proximity without emotional closeness? Let's talk about what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to waste energy trying to manage her emotional experience. I don't want you to bend yourself into a pretzel trying to prevent her from sulking or withdrawing or making comments. That's an impossible game to win. And every single time you play it, you lose. Instead, I want to encourage you to practice a different kind of skill. Holding your ground in the face of her disappointment. She's going to be disappointed, Eleanor, no matter what you do. She has set up a game where the only way for you to win is to make her the center of your life. And since you are not going to do that, you will always feel like you're losing. But what if her disappointment isn't your problem to solve? What if instead of trying to fix it, you allow it to simply exist? And here's what that might look like. When she makes a passive-aggressive comment about your parenting, Just don't take the bait. You don't justify, explain, or apologize. You just let it land and you let it sit because you don't owe her a defense. When she sulks because your daughter isn't responding in the way that she might expect, don't jump in to smooth things over. You don't have to try to make your daughter perform love for her grandmother. You can just let your mom be in her feelings about it. And when she pushes for more time, hold your boundary. This is what works for our family. No justifications, no over explaining. Here's something that also feels a little bit important to say, but I know it's also going to be hard to hear. And I'm sorry about that, but we tell the truth on this show. Okay, here goes, Eleanor. You have spent your whole life being the one managing this relationship. You call them, you structure their time with your kids, you set boundaries, and you absorb the guilt that comes when they push back. You're the one working so hard to make this thing functional. And I've got to wonder here, what would happen if you just stopped? Not in a punishing, fine, I'm going to cut them off kind of way, but what if you just let go of the pressure to make this relationship work? Would they call you? Would they adjust? Would they try to meet you where you are? Or would they just sit there waiting for you to do the work again? And I know that is a really hard question to ask, but I also think it's an important one because when you grow up with emotionally limited parents, you learn really early that the relationship is your responsibility. It's on you to make it work. It's on you to absorb the tension, to smooth things over, to pick up the phone, to put in the effort. And if you don't, it just stops. And that's what makes stepping back feel so hard. It's not just about boundaries. It's about confronting the reality that if you're not the one holding this thing together, maybe no one is. And that realization, I know, it can be painful as hell. And I think that's the part that's making all of this so confusing for you, because setting boundaries is supposed to make you feel better, right? It's supposed to make things easier. But what actually happens? You feel sad. You feel guilty. You feel the loneliness of realizing that your parents don't adjust. They just pull away. You feel the grief of knowing you will never have the relationship you wanted. And that grief can make you second guess your boundaries. It can make you wonder if you're doing the right thing. So I want to say this clearly. Feeling sad doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It just means letting go of fantasy. And that is painful. It's painful because you want something that they'll never be able to give. It's painful because you're trying to create a connection that just, they don't know how to have it. And it's painful because you keep trying and they keep being exactly who they've always been. That doesn't mean you have to cut them off. It just means that untangling from enmeshment means choosing yourself first. It means calling when you want to, not because you feel like you have to. It means setting limits on their time with your kids and not explaining yourself. Letting go of the idea that you are responsible for making the relationship feel good for them. And most of all, it means grieving the fact that they will never be what you wish they were. And I think that's where you are right now. You're trying to make peace with the fact that you have parents, but you don't have what other people have. You're trying to figure out how to keep them in your life without losing yourself in the process. And I don't have an easy answer for that, and I really wish I did. But here's what I do know. You do not have to earn your parents' love. You don't have to prove that you're a good daughter by sacrificing your peace. You don't have to fix this relationship if they aren't willing to meet you halfway. And if stepping back brings up sadness, that's okay. It's sad. It's okay to let it be sad. And if holding a boundary makes you feel more grief, let yourself feel that grief. It is sad when we have to set boundaries in our relationships, when we have to tell someone where they end and we begin. None of that is a sign that you did something wrong. It's a sign that you're letting go of what was and what was never yours to carry. And I want you to know, too, that this just isn't about you now. It's about your kids. It's about the ripple effect of every decision you make when it comes to your parents, knowing that whatever you do or don't do is going to impact them. And I know and I recognize that that makes all of this so much harder, because it's one thing to wrestle with your own history with your parents, to wonder if you're overreacting, to second guess yourself when you feel that pull of obligation. But when you look at your kids, that doubt fades because your body knows. Right now, your nervous system is sounding the alarm, not just because of your relationship with your parents, but because it sees what's happening with your kids. Your parents are offering them the same lazy, inconsistent, transactional version of love that they gave you. They want access to your kids, but they don't have the capacity or the willingness to actually be in relationship with them. And your body knows this. It sees the discrepancy in real time. It sees the way your parents hover around the edges of your life, making themselves central without actually ever showing up in any kind of meaningful way. It sees the way they take offense when your kids behave like kids instead of like trained performers. It sees how your mom shuts down when she doesn't get the exact response she expects, how she can't connect with your kids in the way that your mother-in-law does. And you know what, Eleanor? I believe you. I believe your body. It is right on this. And my hunch, that rising tension you're feeling, that thing that's making you want to scream, something has got to give, isn't just about you. It is your mama bear instinct. I say this all the time to daughters. In fact, I think you heard me say it last week. You will all do for your kids what you wouldn't do for yourselves. And I think, Eleanor, deep down, you already know what's happening here. There's this quiet voice inside you, and it is the one that is getting louder, and it is telling you that it can't possibly continue this way, that something needs to shift, not just for you, but to protect your kids from the same emotional confusion, the same invisible contract that you spent your entire life trying to navigate. And Eleanor, here's a little bit more truth. That voice is really worth listening to, because this isn't just about keeping the peace. It is about breaking the pattern. And I know you're strong enough to do that. This is not easy stuff, Eleanor, and it is not an easy conversation, and I want to help you hold it. And I think I can do that by offering you a container that will guide you toward your next right step. Given everything you know now, everything that you believe to be true now, what is your next right step? Eleanor, your parents expect access to your life, to your kids, to your energy, but they are not offering you any kind of real connection in return. That is that unspoken contract I've been talking to you about. They get to be involved, but on their terms. And your role, whether they say it out loud or not, is to keep allowing that access, even when it costs you. But you do not have to keep signing this contract. And a helpful first step, actually name the contract out loud to yourself. Write it down. Say it in the mirror. Whatever can help you make it feel real. I have been operating under the belief that I owe them a certain level of access, even though I get little emotional connection in return. I have been making space for them, even when they make me feel criticized, diminished, or unseen. I am allowed to change the terms. I get to decide what I will and won't allow. And I know that sounds simple and maybe even a little bit trite, but bringing these patterns into the light really can be powerful. And it's about noticing what's happening in your body when you're around them. Start paying close attention to how you are feeling in your body when they are around, when they're texting you, when they're calling, or even when you're thinking about interacting with them. Do you feel yourself bracing, armoring up, shrinking, anxiously scanning to see if they're going to be displeased? That is all data, and it's really good information for you. Your body is giving you information about what's working for you and what isn't. And you can use that information to start making decisions about the kind of contact that actually serves you. And just like you heard me talk last week, right now we want you experimenting with smaller shifts. Right now you're trapped in this all or nothing thinking. How do I either cut them out or find a way to make this work? But those aren't your only options. You don't have to figure all of it out today. Instead, try little small intentional micro movements or shifts that can give you a little bit of breathing room. For example, you can try limiting calls. If you're calling 5 days a week, try calling only 3. And then notice in your body what it feels like. Pay attention to what it feels like at first, and then pay attention to what happens as your body gets used to calling less. You might be super amped up about it and then find yourself calming down the more weeks that go on with the fewer number of phone calls. And you can practice delaying your response to them, not as a punishment, but as a practice, so that you train your body to stop jumping at their needs right away. You do not have to make yourself, your husband, or your kids instantly available to them. And this means stop managing their feelings or making yourself responsible for them. If your mom makes a passive-aggressive comment about your parenting, you just got to let that go and let it sit with her. You don't have to soften it. You don't have to explain yourself. And maybe you don't even acknowledge it. Because, Eleanor, here's something I really enjoy reminding myself a time or two. Not responding is a response. Not managing is a choice. Not justifying is an act of trust in yourself. Then, with a little bit of space, you can start getting clear on what you actually want for your kids, not what you think you're supposed to want or what you're obligated to do regardless of what you actually want. Right now, your parents have access to your children, but they don't have a relationship with them. And your gut already knows that this isn't what you want. So ask yourself, What kind of relationship do I actually want my kids to have with their grandparents? Not just what you think they should have, but what actually feels good to you. If you feel uncomfortable with how much access they have, adjust it. If you notice your kids are picking up on criticism or emotional manipulation, trust that and say so. If you feel relief when you take space, listen to that relief. And here's another hard truth, because this is an episode that is fast becoming full of them. Your parents are not going to like it. But, Eleanor, it is just not your job to make them like it. It is to build the kind of home and family life that feels safe, stable, and emotionally healthy for you, your husband, and your kids. Eleanor, you don't have to know exactly what you're going to do next. You don't have to have the whole perfect plan all mapped out. You just need to trust that your feelings are real, your instincts are trustworthy, and your nervous system is not lying to you. Start small, test things out, see what gives you more breathing room, and then make more of those kinds of choices. You are already doing this, Eleanor. Now it's time to trust yourself in it. And I hope that as you heard your letter read back to you, that you also heard what is so very clear to me. You already know, Eleanor, and if you need me to sign this permission slip, here you go. I've got you. All of you are in this community of women around the world who are in this together. And I, for sure, most definitely, am in it with you too. I do hope you enjoyed today's conversation. If you have a question you'd like me to consider for the show, please do email me over at heather@daughtersnpd.com. You are always welcome to share your story or questions by recording yourself using the voice app on your phone. For best recording quality, please do record directly into your phone without using headphones or Bluetooth speakers. We're building an incredible community as well over on Instagram, and I'd love to see you over there too. You can find us at Daughters NPD. Lastly, if you love what you've been hearing here on Mayhem and have found the show helpful in your own trauma recovery, please do consider becoming a Mother Mayhem sponsor by purchasing simple scripts for saying hard things. It's a resource I created that provides the right words for the hard conversations, and it covers life, love, and work. You'll find a link for that in the show notes. If you know another woman who needs this conversation in her life, please do share the show with her. Your reviews and social shares help spread the word, and I hope you'll consider doing so. Special thanks to Heather Clark for editing the show. She's in my head and knows what I meant to say when the words come out backwards. Thanks so much for your time today. As always, I'm in it with you. Bye for now.